Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Delivered, where we talk about building great digital products and successful businesses. My name is Chris Bradshaw. I am the Product Strategy Director here at Infinum, and I'll be your host for today. And what a show we have today. We have a great guest. His name is Jason Grant. He's somewhat of a design hero, really. I can only describe him as. He is a UX designer, a design coach, design thinker, and through his company Integral, he's been helping huge brands for 15 years, such as Amex, BT, HSBC all achieve great customer-centric products. Essentially, he sits at the intersection between design, psychology, technology, and business. So this guy knows his stuff. And before we jump into talking to Jason, a quick mention about the Q&A. There's a Q&A box in your screen. Please feel free to add your questions as we go through the conversation. Keep them short, concise, and to the point. And we'll try and get through as many as possible at the end of the show. Hello there, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing fantastically well, and I'm slightly insulted actually that you described me as design hero as opposed to design god, but I'll just work with the hero.
Well, welcome to Delivered, Design Gods. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And hey, look, I tried to set the scene for the people watching the show, and I tried to get it short and sweet. But of course, I can only do so much. I feel like we should come from the man himself. Let's talk about you, because I know you've done quite a varied background, and you've got an amazing CV in design. And I would just love to hear a bit about yourself and just where you've come from, really, first and foremost. Let's just set the scene for the audience.
So that question of where I come from is multifaceted. So I'm originally from ex-Yugoslavia geographically, and that's significant in the sense that in ex-Yugoslavia, where I was growing up until the age of 11, before the war kicked off, there was very big dominance of mathematics and sciences and even computer science. So I actually ended up in a computer science class at the age of 8 or 9 and started coding at the age of 9 because they had actually computer labs back then.
Mm.
And that's where I caught the bug for technology stuff and basically coding games and stuff like that. And then I spent 3 years in the war in Bosnia and ended up in UK as a refugee in '95, but continued that kind of passion and hunger for IT and making things digitally, let's say.
Mm.
And then that led me to studying maths, chemistry, and music at A levels, then a computer science degree at Goldsmiths College, which is an arts college. So I was exposed to computer science at an arts college, and you can describe design as a mixture of art and engineering, and the kind of fine middle fold of that. Um,
Mm.
and then I did a master's degree at Royal Holloway in business information systems, which was early predecessor to basically user experience design and systems design, systems thinking, and that kind of stuff, modeling systems for
Mm.
businesses. And then I started my company back in 2005, which at the time was called FlexiWebs, which stood for Flexible Electronic Web-Based Systems. And over time, that evolved into such a sort of, it was building full stack systems solutions for web,
Mm.
but design and UX design became such a dominant thing that I ended up doing lots and lots of more UX design and less development. Although nowadays I find myself going almost full circle because I'm reintegrating my development and full stack development skills into design processes to make
Mm.
more real things. So nowadays my company is called Integral Redesigning Humanity, to remind me and everyone else that we're here to basically really make a humanity-wide impact, and we can with everything that we've got access to.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I feel like, having that kind of why statement as well, redesign humanity, I think that's such a great kind of aspirational thing as well. Because I feel like, it's an ever changing facet of what we do in our business, right? That is always changing. Technology is always changing. I guess
Hmm.
people are always changing as well.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like you've got such a rich, solid background of different skill sets. I suppose really like, what was the kind of thing that made you switch more into the kind of UX design aspect of it? Was it the humanity part of the equation?
Well, I come from hardcore sciences. Like mathematics to me is still close to my heart.
Mm.
I love maths, basically. I love numbers. I love music, and music is a mathematical creation, believe it or not. So I'm a
Mhm.
musician as well. But and as a musician, I see myself more as a mathemagician, let's say something like that. But and that's actually a term, mathemagic. It's actually a real term. So
Right.
um, so so what I realized is that when I was building things originally, I was building them for the sake of being gratified by the process of making something. So
Mm.
that was gratifying. But then I realized, okay, I would make something and I would like it, and then I would give it to someone else, and they're like, nah, whatever. Or
Mm.
they would really love it,
Mm.
and then it was like, wow, I want to serve them even more. But really, the switch over happened to UX design happened when I was working, actually originally with a national lottery here in UK, which is actually one of the
Mm.
biggest brands in UK. And I was building the front end for the new website there, and I was being given these kind of really bad blueprints, basically what could be loosely called wireframes, but they weren't having any details in them. And the
Yeah.
guys were saying they would just have like header, side nav, content here, and then footer. And I would say, like, what's in the header? And the guys would say, like, can
Mm.
you just work it out and just code something in? I was like,
Yeah.
what's in the hero block here? It's like, can you just work something up? And it's like, okay, well, I'm doing everything here. So I realized, okay, this needs to be done a lot better. Basically, the way I was taught in my master's degree, but I thought
Mm.
it was kind of like more like fiction, really, when you were studying it back in 2002. But I
Yeah.
was realized, oh, this is no longer fiction. We need to actually apply it to real businesses. So I basically took
Mm.
it on me to start doing UX design. And then my next project was working on what at the time was direct.gov. And I thought, well, okay, what is this thing? It was basically the first ever e-government movement here in UK, which is a
Yeah.
precursor to what is now Gov UK. And what we were doing is we were setting out the standards for how the e-government was going to run in UK. Now, again, at the time when I was doing this, I thought, well, it's never going to happen. Is this is kind of pie in the
Mm.
sky type thing? Now, Gov UK is talking about rolling AI into everything, and as the next phase is automated government, etc., etc. So the
Yeah. Yeah.
direct.gov standards that we set for UX back in the day are now the standards that are guiding the automation of government, and that could be the next phase. So all these things,
Yeah.
very long-term impact on redesigning humanity.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I always think, for me, UX is about that connection between person and product and that human connection so they understand it, it's intuitive. And, you couldn't talk about UX without dropping in like an Apple reference, of course, like everyone
Mhm.
does. But it sounds as if that what you're talking about is it also provides almost like a framework to kind of like keep evolving products the right way going forward, whatever the technology changes. So I suppose really the question I'd pose
Mhm.
to you is, from a design point of view, like, how important is this in new digital products, new technologies? Because I feel like what you're saying there is it could be pivotal to make it usable and intuitive, but actually it's kind of great building like a framework for the product to evolve organically as it needs to around changes in the world.
Yeah, so for those listening, basically, often a time we would have a reference of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is shown as like a pyramid of self actualization, blah, blah, blah. Now, Maslow never created that, so that should be just completely. If you have those slides, scratch them, delete them, move them out of your way. What you should be using is something known as spiral dynamics, which is evolution of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Maslow's theory of needs. And it talks about 8 stages of human development and values. And it correlates to stages of consciousness. So we have initially instinctive values that humans live to that go up to the holistic values of basically making me one with everything. That, like the joke
Mm.
says, a Buddhist walks into a hot dog bar and says, "Make me one with everything." And that would be basically a thing where we are one with technology and working in complete coherence with technology. But the technology that is dumb at the stage one of instinctive. So, for example, when I started working on the web stuff, you had HTML, and the HTML didn't even have images. So all you could do is dumb, static, textual web pages. You couldn't connect them to databases. And then images came. It's like, wow, I can make this look a bit more real. But then the CSS came and you could style that text and images. And I was like, wow, that's great. And then you're making copy and paste a lot of static pages. And then you could
Yeah.
connect that to a database and you could inject some data. But those you couldn't really query it too much or connect this with that. And then things became more smarter and smarter. So the technology goes through the same stages of value and evolution and consciousness. So the next phase of digital stuff that we're making is stuff that's a lot more actually sentient, right? So you say, like, is Chat GPT sentient? This is kind of conversations that people have, and it's like, well, I'm not sure. Like, the answer is absolutely it is sentient, but it's sentient to a certain level that it will then
Mm,
evolve into next level of sentience. And the
mm.
way we work with that is to integrate it in a way that that level of sentience is useful and usable for the higher level of sentience, which, let's say, we are,
Yeah.
to make our lives better. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I suppose a lot of these things come down to, I think what we need to unpack a little bit is like design thinking at the core of all this, because I feel like at Infinum, everything we do has design thinking from day one. We always start with like the strategy, the why, the human connection, like what does the user need? How do we solve that with a product? All that good stuff. And I suppose like design thinking is something that people may have heard of. I suppose really, yes, it exists in products. And I think as products evolve, like you're saying, it will continue to be at the core of everything we do, or at least we hope it is. What is, someone listening to this now, what is design thinking in principle, and how could they apply that into something that they're doing for their business to help it progress? It could be a product, it could be a solution, it could just be, look, we need to connect our audience better. What is those two things, like design thinking, and then how that helps enable a business with it?
Mhm. So, design thinking is a process that's led by empathy first, unlike most other types of thinking, like business thinking and systems thinking, that are led by what do we need to do? What are kind of the jobs to be done here? Because let's say if I go to the kitchen and I need to wash the dishes, that's my job to be done. And
Mm,
usually most people just feel like, oh god, I was like, I want to do anything but wash the dishes. However, if I apply a modicum of design thinking, I could see that washing the dishes as a way to just de decompress from heavy meetings and lots of kind of pressure that I might have from daily work. And I can
mhm,
actually see that washing the dishes as a meditative activity that basically just relaxes my mind. I could put some music on, I could do some wiggling with my hips because I've been sitting all day and it's good for my lower back and so on. So it becomes like a health and wellness activity that also helps me have clean dishes at the end. So with design thinking, that would then feel a lot better than just the chore of washing the dishes. And so in design thinking, usually the outcome is experience as the product. That's what I find. And because we're now living in an experiential economy, and maybe we could even argue that we're going beyond that, that it's actually like a economy of self transformation, let's say.
mm,
Experience is the product, and the future self is the product. And in design thinking, we're integrating a lot more of the emotional intelligence as an integrative, valuable aspect. Because if I'm driving a car, if that car
mm,
is just like an everyday Fiat, okay, I might pay, I don't know, 20 grand for it. But if it's a
mhm,
Ferrari, I'll pay 100 grand for it, and it make me feel like I'm in a 300 grand car, and my personal value feels like $1 million, right?
mm,
So experience pays as a product, and it's essential. And we can really only design the experience using design thinking, not business and systems thinking. So often the
mm,
time I find myself in situations where a lot of business and systems thinkers have designed processes, and I get brought in as an service experience expert to then say, right, that process does work, but it feels absolutely rubbish, which is no
Mm.
good. It has to feel great. So how do we feel great? We might have to change the process, maybe add some steps to it, maybe
Yeah.
change the way that works so that it feels much better, because only when it feels great is it valuable. And that applies to absolutely everything, like from washing the dishes to what car I'm driving to which furniture I might be buying for my house, etc., etc. Experience is the product.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose in terms of like, yeah, leveraging that into say digital products, for example, is it a fact that, like you say about experience, is it a way in which you can like bolster the connectivity of it? And when I say that, I mean, is design thinking really there just to go? It's about evolution of a product, but equally it's about making sure it's connecting with the right audience at the right time from what it delivers to the world. Is that a fair assumption, or is that kind of something that's a bit too textbook? Like, how do you see that as a practical step for digital product?
Yeah, I think there in my experience, I've found that design thinking can also be applied and practiced at any level of values of the spiral dynamics. So you could have instinctive design thinking, where it's just like, how can I make my table that I work on, desk space, for example, more enjoyable to work at. Okay. And some sort of extreme opposite or highest level of design thinking would be holistic design thinking, where you're looking to design for uh, life ecosystem and everyone involved in the process of the products and services. So it's not even just human centered, it's life centered design, it's planetary centered design, where, and you might say, well, where does that apply? It's like if you're working with a company like BP, uh, that's doing oil and gas rigs around the world, then it has huge impact on the planet, both potentially positive and often very negative. And the positive is what we're looking for usually. So design products and services there is much different than maybe there is some sort of startup that does an app that, you know the app is the product and that's it. Okay, it's a much smaller context, but you realize that behind usually a simple app there's a very complex system that powers it and taps into lots of data centers and
Hmm.
resources that need
Hmm.
to be run and need to be optimized and can be done faster, better, more enjoyably. So it depends on what level of design thinking you're operating at, that you
Hmm.
could be transcending and including a lot more, or very purposely focusing in on a simple and a smaller, narrower context because that's your target intent that you want to impact on.
Makes sense. And I guess from a very, if I'm Christian entrepreneur, I have a business, I have some products potentially to run that business. I suppose what I'm curious about and maybe it's from the audience point of view as well, how can design thinking really help my business, or what areas could that improve? Because I think products important, but like we're talking about here, design thinking can probably be beyond just the actual product itself, right? It could be the business as a whole. How would
Mhm.
you feel about that? Does it impact business at that level?
Yeah. So, as a practitioner of what's called integral meta theory of everything, the one of the aspects of that integral meta theory is four types of reality we're dealing with. One is I, which is singular internal, what's happening in my internal space. The second type is we, which is intersubjective reality, what's happening between us two internally. Then there is the it reality, which is objective reality, what's happening with a product individually, and the its reality, interobjective reality, what's happening with kind of systems and ecosystems. In something that I'm evolving at the moment, which I'm calling integral design, which is shortened to ID. So identity is the key of all of this.
Nice.
We're looking at all these four areas of reality. And when you're designing a company is sitting somewhere in the we space and its space. And
Mm.
I've actually, so whenever someone's designing a business or a venture, that's really what they're looking to impact on the most. And because, like I said, I studied business management way back in 2002. And back in the day, if you read even some of the best business management books, they
Mm.
would at worst give you, like, at best give you like a small headache, and at worst they would make you depressed and want to curl up under the table in a fetal position and just go like,
All been
what
there.
did I just read, man? Like, I don't understand anything
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
So one of my goals in the last bunch of years has been to redesign management and business design,
Mm.
um, into a very simple and understandable and accessible. We're applying all the rules of UX design to make it accessible and understandable and easy to comprehend by basically a 12-year-old to design a company. So I call it Designed Company. And I'm
Nice.
writing a book about this, but it's not just a book, it's a set of methodologies and processes and frameworks
Hmm.
to enable a 12-year-old to design a company that makes sense, that they can pitch to, that they can design, and so on. And then design thinking applies to each one of the areas of design company, which is purpose, people, systems, innovation, products, money, and growth.
Hmm.
And it's really easy to talk about those things. So that's how I
Yeah.
approach it. And I've tested it with my 12-year-old daughter, 17-year-old son, and they're like, I get it. Like, it's easy. So
Interesting. I love that actually. That it's, I think, and maybe it's just me being biased because we're working product. I think design thinking is always applied to, okay, it's got to be a thing that connects with people, and it makes it customer centric, and it is that for sure. But from what I'm hearing as well, like design thinking is so much broader than that. It's about
mhm.
simplicity of anything. It could be a product, could be a business, could be innovation. It's about connection as well. It's about, do people understand it? Is it easy to pick up and use? Can I take forward something with design thinking principles already baked into it because I understand what to do next? And I love that kind of like universal mix of it as well, because it's so much broader than I thought as well, which is super interesting. And I guess just to like keep it in context to help people like relate to this, like could you speak maybe to some of your own work perhaps you've applied design thinking for some form of like transformational change, or significant upgrade to a company? Do you have a past company in mind perhaps that you can relate to?
So one of the most significant clients that I've ever worked with, and significant because of the transformation levels and amounts, let's say, that have happened, is a company
Hmm.
called Rolly, that makes musical instruments, a
Hmm.
silicon surface keyboard called Seaboard.
Hmm.
And that's where I came up with the concept of design the company, because when I originally joined them, they wanted me to just kind of streamline their software look and feel, sort of standardize and systematize the creation of software. And I said after a couple of weeks, I said, like, I can't really justify working here just to do that, because
Hmm.
it like breaks my heart to think that that's the sort of small level of aim that we're going for. So I said
Yeah.
to the CEO, Roland Lamb, I just turned around to him and said, I can't be working here just doing the software. And he said, what do you mean? I said, we've got a huge opportunity to redesign the whole company here. And he
Hmm.
just turned, and I thought, well, God, I just like voted myself out of one of the most exciting startups in UK. And he turned to me and said, can you help us with that? I said, like, absolutely. And he said, all right, go ahead. So I
Hmm.
basically took up this role of redesigning Rolly as a company. And that was my intent, which I decided on, and with Roland's kind of blessing,
Yeah.
took a kind of course to do that. And one of the exercises we did was to write a future Wikipedia page about Rolly, where Rolly was going to be in sort of 5 years' time. And
Nice.
I remember, I was working with the product designer there, and he was saying something like, in 5 years, we have launched this product. And I said, you think it's too small, right? It's way too small. I said, what do you mean? It's like, as I said, in 5 years' time, we're global partners with Apple, selling online and in
Hmm.
store in Rolly designed booths in Apple, like point of sale. It's like, dude, that's crazy. You're like,
Yeah.
deluded, like officially gone crazy. I said, no, just write. It's a Wikipedia page. We can write whatever we want.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
okay, he was like, with hesitation, he wrote it and so on. Within a year from that, writing that Wikipedia page, Rolly was Apple partners worldwide online, and in stores. And we had a point of sale systems in Apple stores, and Apple was talking about Rolly as a music partner in the launches of iPhone,
Mhm.
etc., etc. So that was
Yeah.
all done through designing the company using design thinking at all these 7 areas that I spoke about.
Nice. And again, it's like I feel like it's almost like a revelation of what design thinking could actually bring to companies. Like it's so much more than just products now, isn't it? It's actually talking about,
Yeah.
you're saying there, it's like it's actually helping you forge a north star of the business when
Hmm.
applied correctly. And
Exactly.
is it possible to even measure? And don't hate me for saying this, because you know all these things in
Yeah.
business has to be quantified, OKR'd, KPI'd, whatever. Is there a way to even measure the success of like a design thinking initiative in the context of innovation or building companies? Is that even possible?
Um,
It might be
everything's
no.
possible. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
everything's The statement goes, everything is possible, not everything is highly probable. Okay,
Mm,
so
mm,
one of the actual around designed company framework, and I was saying I'm writing this as a book, but then I realized kind of book is okay, but I like the idea that the book comes with uh, a framework, a way of thinking, some practices, methodologies, etc. One of the things that we started doing, and then it was kind of started as a startup. It was too much of a kind of like pushing hard to do this, but
mm,
we started actually creating a piece of software which was going to quantify all of these things: purpose, people, systems, innovation, products, money, and growth for a given company, based
mhm,
on votes from each individual employee every single day. So every employee at a company would get a question from each area, which they would
mhm.
answer both quantitatively and qualitatively, as well as with their emotional
Yeah.
resonance. Okay, what they're thinking and feeling, and that would all roll up into a daily report board for the
Mhm.
executives to look at and evolve and so on, and then
Yeah.
that could roll back down to improvements, etc. So the answer, as far as I'm concerned, and this is where we're going to end up sooner or later, just give
Mhm.
give enough chat gpt queries and we'll be there.
Yeah.
um,
Fair.
uh, Basically, every designed company is going to be in real time, completely and utterly quantified and qualified as to how well it's doing. uh, and
Wow.
that is the North Star, not to aim for, but is that will become like a starting point. I'll go
Yeah.
like, as a consultant, I want to go in and say, I don't know what's going on here. I want to run this thing for a week or two, see what the employees are thinking, gather that real world insight and research, and then say, well, the dashboards, the computer says 5 out of 10, and
Yeah.
so much out of in each one of these areas, and our product thing is 1 out of 10. So if I were sane, logical person, which I think I am last time I checked, I would start with improving the product to get it at least to like 7 out of 10, and then we can
Yeah.
look at the other areas. Yeah, that's the idea
It's,
here.
it's super interesting because I love the fact this is all like, the weighted importance of research as well. Like you're saying there,
Mhm.
like quantitative and qualitative data. And I can't even count the amount of times when if we're building a client, for example, when we're going for a new engagement with Infinum to a new client, we're in discovery and we're going, okay, we're helping you build a business strategy. It could be validation of your product. It could be actual product strategy. And the whole thing really sits in that like weighted, like there needs to be research continuously just to not just almost validate the need for it, but like you're saying
Mhm.
there around how to measure success, like just to make sure it's continually being researched and checked. Because
Mhm.
actually,
Yeah.
without that, it's almost like you're flying blind, or worse, using assumption, right, as your way to deem success. Where I love the fact that this actually is like an unlock for not just like a North Star, but also weighted in like research as well. So I think that's a great thing. And you mentioned there your book as well about designing companies. I'd love to maybe dig into that a little bit more, just explain that concept, because when it's ready, I'd love a copy, of course. But yeah, just to maybe unlock a bit more about that in terms of like how it's helping people to design companies or at least guide them through it.
So so what I've done over the years is I'm a little bit of a like a startup investor and have been investing in startups both through like my own sweat equity, trying my
Yeah.
own things, as well as actually putting my hard-earned cash into other startups and quite often seeing it fail. And it's like the feeling, oh my God, if you want to feel the worst feeling in the world,
Mm,
on some level, like let's say on the financial intelligence front, is like you give somebody else money and then watch them do all the wrong things with your own money, and then the company goes bankrupt, and then
mm,
you're like, but I knew how to fix this, right? But I didn't necessarily know how to tell them, like really, because people want this little like TikToks, right? Of like, do this, do that, do that, do that, and then you'll see it flourish, right? They don't want like big sort of war and peace kind of essays about it. So um, what this is about is distilling all those years of working with startups, investing in startups, building my own startups that started working and then couldn't sort of get them to the next level and so on, and saying,
mhm,
how can I just kind of normalize this into a model that I myself can use actually on, again, on every level of value. So I can use design company model just to organize my next task or what I need to do. What's the
mhm.
purpose of this task? Okay, I want to get the dishes washed. Okay,
Yeah.
who are the people who are going to do this? Well, it's me who's doing it, but it's my wife who's going to be beneficiary because she's going to really love me when I wash the dishes. What's the
Mhm,
system for this? I'm going to go to the kitchen and just wash it, but while I'm doing that, I'm going to put some music on. Okay, what's the innovation? Music thing. Okay,
mhm.
what's the product? Clean dishes and actually a happy wife, which is happy life.
Yeah.
uh, how much money does that take? Well, maybe it's going to take me half an hour, right? But really, it's going to pay off so many other ways. You know, who knows? I might even get a hug afterwards.
Yeah.
And what's the growth of that? Well, I feel much better. My wife will feel better. She won't have to do it herself. And actually, our family is going to benefit because now I've contributed not just, through my regular work, but also through participating in the housework. So there's the application of design company model to just the thing of washing the dishes. But you
Yeah.
can see that every company has a purpose, people it serves and that serve the customers, systems that it goes through, what's the innovation, some unique selling point, what's the final
Mm.
product, which is usually some sort of distilled artifact or a service. How much money does it take to make that, and how much money does it make off the back of it, and how does it grow? So that's basically design company in a nutshell. And if it's
Yeah.
not pitchable in this sort of like TikToky way, it's failed. So that's why I've been refining this for so long, because
Yeah.
it
Of
has to
course.
work like this, super simple stories, basically, which I
Yeah.
have a trademark on. So
Wow. Okay. So you're going all in on this. I love it.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
and, and do you have an example? I'm just thinking for people at home as well. But do you have an example of maybe like a design company they could relate to? And I know obviously Apple isn't probably an obvious one. So we take Apple out of the
Mhm.
equation.
Yeah.
Is there another design company that you would
Yeah.
lean into?
So I'd say the things that come to mind are things like Airbnb is very designed. And you'll find that designed companies are usually created by designer founders. So Airbnb is a great example. I was recently stayed
Mm.
in Slovenia at Airbnb, and during the process there, it showed me uh, like everything, like what's the Wi-Fi password, how, like, where do I need to drop the key off after I leave the room, who do
Yeah.
I speak to, like all these kind of little small things that most people are just like, well, work it out there. It's like, I'm first time in Slovenia, I've never been here, I feel kind of freaked out, like I'm having to ad hoc stay somewhere, I don't know where I'm going, is it a bad area, is it a good area, how long is the walk, where it's like
Yeah.
it's really kind of freaking me out. But Airbnb makes you feel comfortable going through that kind of what feels like just a
Mm.
process, right? But it's not a process because that process can become a nice experience. And if it is a nice experience, then I'm going to talk about it like I'm talking right now, right? So this is very big value for Airbnb. In terms of Apple, yes, I mean, basically a design company is any company where you look at the products and services and systems and the brand and so on, and you kind of scratch your head and go like, I'm not
Mm.
really immediately sure how I would improve this or make it better. Now, where Apple is, for example, falling, dropping off since the death of, peace be upon him, Steve Jobs,
Of
um,
course.
uh, where Apple is no longer an experience company. Apple is now a product company that's interested in making more and more money for itself and the stakeholders, shareholders.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the Apple Pro, Vision Pro, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
has failed at creating a consumable product that gives good experience, because people are having backache and falling over with their heads with a heavy thing on their head.
Hmm.
That's not good enough. And so if you asked me this before Apple Vision Pro was released, is Apple design company, I'd say yes. Now I've got a question, design company question mark. Okay.
Love it. It's like because you're right, actually. Yeah, you're like how different now is Apple, and you're right. And I guess what I'm taking away from all of this actually is anyone that has a design company or they're injecting design thinking into their business products or innovations, ultimately the outcome of it is creating, I guess it's more of a feeling, isn't it? I mean, I know it's quite
Yeah.
fluffy, and
Yeah.
there's bits in between that are more practical, like like we are saying before, like research and connection with people and products working better for people to use. But the end result really is like you want to build affinity with your audience and create a feeling of trust and simplicity. And I guess like you're saying about Airbnb, it's like it just makes things easier for people. So
Yeah.
therefore they're already feeling safe and and you don't have to think about it too much. And I think it's just, yeah, maybe that's the underlying thing about this design thinking.
Yeah.
It means you don't have to think that much because you're actually feeling quite safe and happy with the service or product. It's interesting.
Feeling is the product, and this actually correlates to something like music. If any one of your listeners has kind of done any music performance, sometimes there's a famous kind of like meme in music where a guy plays like a one-stringed guitar, right? Is some sort of like a homeless beggar, and he's just playing one-string guitar, but it sounds great because it's creating a great feeling and people love it, right? And sometimes you
Mm.
have these virtuosos who are playing all the right notes fast and correctly and in time, but it sounds like a machine is playing. There's no real feeling there, and people like tune out. I don't
Yeah.
care. So
Yeah.
music is a good correlate here to actually understand why do you like something where someone's singing slightly off key and so on, but they're bringing their heart and soul into it. They care about what they're doing with the song and performing it, versus someone who's just kind of on the job and just playing the notes and so on. So
Mm.
that's a kind of correlate there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's such a wide spectrum here we could like delving into. Like, I mean, I'm trying to resist going down more questions and more things to get into. I suppose really just for like the listeners as well, do you have any, being the design, well, was it God we said at the start, uh, in terms of like just final advice for the viewers, words of wisdom around this, how would you express something like quite concise and meaningful they could take away, to use in their business around, either business being designed better, innovations being designed better, just essentially how can you apply that design thinking and design to create better ecosystems for people? What is that kind of final thought you could give someone? And I appreciate that's a lot to condense into one final
No, I
thought, but
mean, it's
you
very
know,
simple advice to go in line and with integrity of what I've been speaking throughout this conversation that we've had is
mm,
maybe in the next session or workshop or whatever you're doing. Okay, start with a feeling. Okay, what is the intended feeling I want to have or create when I make this thing or produce this, whatever it is? Okay, what is the
yeah, yeah,
intended feeling I'm having? And actually, for bonus points, how can I bring that feeling through the process of making this thing as well? Because sometimes you see like the notion of soul food, yeah, is that
mm,
uh, a mother with decades of experience of making something, she puts her heart and soul into making this bread, and then when you're eating that bread, you're eating part of her soul and her heart. It doesn't sound that great, but she's brought the emotions into the
yeah,
food, and that
yeah,
food tastes better because it's been made with heart and soul. That's an
mm,
ingredient. So that's a feeling. And then so you want to create a feeling, use the feeling while you're creating it, and then at the end, The intent is to create the feeling, use that feeling throughout the creation process, and then test that is the feeling that you're giving your audience and your uh, consumers, like people.
Mm.
Let's just call them
Mm.
people. I don't like the word consumers, right?
Sure. Yeah. I
Feeling
mean,
is it.
it feels like feeling is like the underlying, and I never expected this from the conversation actually. Like, so
Yeah.
feeling is almost like the most critical slash the outcome that you deliver
Yeah.
with the right design thinking. Love
Yeah,
that.
and that's why beforehand I was saying, it said like let's not talk about spirituality, but this does connect to spirituality in the sense that a lot of the time the system that we live in has made us kind of like productivity freaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forgetting the feeling. And spirituality to some extent is like, okay, sit down on like a yoga thing, right? And just kind of sit with the feeling. How is this making me feel? If I'm feeling like upset and tired and worked
Mm-hmm.
up and stressed, that's not a feeling from which you create good feeling products. So it's important for us to internally feel as good and as motivated and passionate about this to create products that others will consume.
Yeah, love that. So, Jason, we have many questions. I'm just trying to find the right one to start with here, based off that kind of epic kind of synopsis and wrap up around design thinking. Well, I suppose actually this is a good one here. So let's jump to a Q&A. We have quite a few to get through, so I'll get through as many as we can with the time we have. But just on and this is a great one to start with actually, from Georgia in the UK. And this is everything we've talked about. How do you overcome resistance to change or skepticism about adopting design thinking methodologies within an organization? Big questions.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, this is $100 billion question, quite literally, because a lot of the companies that we end up working with are worth trillions now. The top companies in the world are worth trillions. So the change that you make is often worth hundreds of billions. So that is literally hundreds of billions dollars worth question, and it does come to that notion of quantification, but quantification that includes the feelings and the so-called immaterial as valuable thing.
Mm, mm,
So you got to, and sometimes you might illustrate this to stakeholders to say, what happens if we just continue as we are? Because there's basically three types of companies that I think of. There's companies that are going down, and they're
yeah.
usually like in desperation to just go anywhere but down. Okay, the
Mm,
companies that are flatlining, which are like, oh, this is boring, or if we continue longer like this, we're going to start going down. Okay,
yeah.
so that's their motivation is to somehow start going up. What do we need to do? Change, improve somehow. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's companies who are going up, okay? And you might think, well, it's going up. What's wrong? And it's like, well, now they want to go even up, like higher up, okay? Faster. And so sometimes those are the ones that need the most kind of transformational conviction, because it's like, we're already doing well. What else do you have in mind, right?
Yeah.
But the argument is always, if we continue this way, where are we going to be in, let's say, 5 years' time? And what kind of change do we need to make in order to be in opposite of going down or upping the flatlining or making more of a hockey stick from a linear growth? So
Mm.
it's that's the argument that needs to be made.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And actually, as you were kind of educating on that answer, we've had a great comment in from Steve Morris, actually. And I love what he's referenced here. He's talked about a famous quote from Tim Brown, which is rather than thinking to
Mm,
build, build to think. And
mhm,
actually, it's short and sweet, but the theory behind it obviously is like, let's just deliver some assets because people like assets and deliverables, of
mhm,
course. But actually, what it's doing is it's about doing the work to learn from the work, then this kind of agonizingly, theorizing over and over before you even do anything. So I do
mhm.
love that concept as well. So thank you, Steve, on the Q&A for that little bit of insight as well. So yeah, I mean, I just love that idea, and I think that's something I'm always passionate about. It's like it's just about doing the work. Ideas are great, talking's great to a point, but actually, does it get anything done, or do you learn from it? Just doing that
Yeah.
work is the way to go. Yeah.
And this actually brings me about to what I was saying at the very beginning of the podcast, which is that I started as a full stack developer. And then over
Mm,
the years, I stopped doing development because it was the UX design is basically producing like static pictures of things and maybe a clickable prototype and stuff. But now I've gone all the way back to actually developing again. And I'm building my own tool which
mm,
helps me with my own productivity. But the way I'm building it now and designing basically through code, and now with ChatGPT, it can help me kind of get unstuck where I'm kind of not very good with like advanced SQL queries, join this with that. It's like always hated that.
sure.
ChatGPT does it like this, like let's go, champ. So I'm like
Yeah.
always feeling good about that. But the way I'm doing this is I'm building every single mini story that I'm building is judged on whether it feels good at the end, right? And if it's creating me a better feeling of productivity, then it's working. If not, I remove it. Okay.
Mm,
And by design and through design thinking, I can pre-think what's going to make me feel better. But ultimately, I'm the judge of whether it really does that. And I'm open to, going like, I thought this was going to work, but maybe it doesn't. Usually, so far, it's kind of 75% it works. But that's a kind of practice of, just really making something that you can really judge based on not just dummy data but actually working yourself every day and going,
yeah.
can I continue doing this for like years to come, right, and still feel enthused about it? And if the answer
Mm.
is no, then it's kind of not feeling that great. It needs to be improved somehow.
Yeah, you mentioned before actually like a spiritual thing. What we're talking about here is, does that work in a business context? There's also a
Uh-huh.
message there about yourself, isn't it? About like your life, like how you do things too.
Yeah.
And I have another question here actually. It's quite interesting because it bounced off the back of that. Another one from the UK, Susan. Thanks for this. Can design thinking be applied into a service industry as well, not just products? Because I only know product myself. So can this be applied into a service industry?
So, after many, many years of contemplation, I've come to a conclusion that there's no such thing as product alone, and there's no such thing as service alone. Every product comes with some
Right.
element of service, and every service delivers some sort of product, even if that product at the end is the experience, the feeling. Okay. Just that, the nebulous thing. So, for
Mhm.
example, what you might think of if you go to a spiritual retreat, okay, there's lots of products there actually. It's not even a great example. But let's say if the spiritual retreat was just you and I walking together down the park, okay,
Mhm.
well, at the end of that walk, if you were to tell me how to change my life, blah, 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 the product would be that one, I'm feeling better about myself. And second, that I'm somehow transformed, even by a picometer of self transformation. I'm better off after that talk than when we started. So there's always a product at the end of a service. And with products, you always have to kind of use it somehow. So uh, there is an element of process. Service is basically just the process around using the product.
Mm.
How do I charge it? How do I maybe recycle it? How do I use it day to day? What happens if the battery goes out altogether? All this kind of thing. There's lots of services usually associated with every product, especially if it's got software in it, etc. Software as a service, remember? So these things are very, intertwined, have always been intertwined, and
Mm.
they're actually almost like interchangeable. I used to struggle with this when I was working with a company like Bupa, where there would be just a an insurance, health insurance company. And what's their product? It's a health insurance, which I'm always thinking as a service. Okay, I'm signing up for the service of health insurance, but they internally call it a product. That's their
Mm.
product. Like, it took me years to get my head around this idea that a service is a product. Oh my god, yeah. But it's just like the very weird thing about English language, but that's why in design company, I just call this products, eh? Because
Yeah,
even a
fair.
service-based company is delivering a product because the customer at the end, they're kind of thinking I'm consuming a product. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I suppose on the riff of kind of like self as much as business, let's kind of
Uh-huh,
wrap up with a final
uh-huh.
question about
Yeah.
self. And this is from Marcy in New York, I believe. If you could go back to the beginning of your career with design thinking, with all the knowledge that you have now, what advice would you give yourself?
My advice to myself would be to understand the idea that humans are emotional creatures and to never try and amputate emotions out of my being, okay? And to never disregard emotions from the communication um, from other people.
Mm,
And again, English language here is that there's many ways in which English people will say thank you. I'm originally from Bosnia. In Bosnia, they don't say thank you or please. People just do for you. It's like, here's the food, right? Because I'm doing you. I don't need to say please eat it, like, or thank you for consuming it. That's the food. I trust it's good. Just eat it, right? But in English, there's thank you. So you could say thank you in many different ways depending on the emotion behind it. Sometimes people are like, thank you, meaning I'm pissed off with you, and there is a swearing word, or
yeah,
thank you so much. It could be like emotionally, like really lovingly said, and that's like an honest thank you. Or
yeah,
it could be like a diplomatic thank you, as in, thank you for all your service, goodbye. It's basically a thank you saying we don't need you anymore. So there's
yeah, of
very
course.
different ways, and it all depends on the emotion behind that word, what is the actual true meaning. So don't disregard emotion. Don't try and amputate it out of yourself, and understand that emotions from the other people are the true information that you're looking to utilize, as opposed to words. So
Yeah, love that. I feel like I'm walking away from this, like not necessarily thinking much about design per se or innovations. I'm just thinking more about like feelings myself, emotions of other people. So I thank you for that, Jason. Look, I think that's been great. Just to deep dive into all of that and learn everything. And hey, look, thank you for the time today. Thank you for the insight. I really do appreciate everything you've been sharing, and best of luck with the book as well. It looks like it's going to be a
thank you
great
so
one.
much. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for everyone for beautiful questions. And just one more reminder, we're basically entering this age of self-transformation as a thing. That's one other thing that I didn't mention here, but I have a program called Fresh Mind, which you can check out on freshmind.life, which is about transforming yourself through design thinking. So that's also very, very funky thing to do. So
Love that. Great stuff. Thank you, Jason. That's great to see.
cheers.
Well, thank you, Jason, once again for the time, the insights, the knowledge share. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today as well. It's you for taking your time out of your busy day to join us for the Delivered show. And I think off the back of everything we've talked about today, if you have any questions, any needs, any big ideas or challenges that revolve around innovation, design, product, anything like that, I feel like if you have that need, go to infinum.com, just hit us up. We have 20 years of experience building awesome products here, and actually, we'd love to help you figure out what you need to do with yours. And just to help back up that statement, we are also in the chat going to have a link to our design handbook, and that will have everything that we do at Infinum, how to basically use the right methods, the right process, our tools, tips and tricks and templates, just to help you level up your design skills, your team's design skills. It's there, it's free, it's there for you to enjoy. So go in the chat, the link is in there. And last but not least, next time on Delivered, we have another amazing guest, different skill set this time. His name is Nicholas Kula. He's the head of product experience at one of the most respected camera companies in the whole world, Leica cameras. He has an extensive background in innovation and product management and how to apply that into consumer electronics on a global level. So if you have an idea around innovation meets product management and UX, this is the guy that's going to help you basically get a better sense as to build digital products for the future. So I definitely recommend tuning in for that for Nico. How do you do that? It's quite simple. You go to infinum.com/delivered, and in there you can sign up for our free newsletter where you can get all the latest news on upcoming events. You can also go back in time and see all the past events that we've done and the past guests on there. So that being said, that's a wrap for today. I've been Chris Bradshaw. This has been Delivered. Wish you all a beautiful, happy day. Great to see you all. Goodbye.